And I brought some other voices. Actually, I got excited about this. But Marianne, I think naturally it's like the forms. She always loved them. For me, it was like, and I've come to love them, but it wasn't my first entry point of jumping in with enthusiasm. And then the question always is it can sometimes look like the most important part of the way people view Zen is, there's all these services and there's all these chanting, and then there's the Zazen form, and maybe you like it and maybe you don't like it, and maybe spits you out, and maybe it keeps you there, and maybe you keep in the an embodied conversation with it, because it is a body practice. That, in the most fundamental way, this is a body practice. And so this is what's been handed down to us across time to help train our bodies and hearts and minds. And I've been in enough Zen situations where it doesn't exactly look like the heart, that the heart somehow got left out, and the forms were just something that you should do. And there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And unfortunately, people haven't always been, I think, treated so nicely. So that's not what we're doing here. Everyday Zen. Norman Fisher was abbot at Zen Center, and when he left, one of the things he did really clearly was say, we're going to hold the forms lightly. And it's clearly what we do here. So how we are in relationship to each other, and the way the forms help us come into relationship with ourselves and our Buddha nature and our one heart, and each other, is, if there is a point, the point. So, but I want to share what some other people have to say, because that always helps me. I'm always so curious what other people have to say. I'll show you the two things I'm going to bring forward in a minute. Is one, I said a fair amount on Tuesday about the retreat down in Tassajara. So if you want to hear more, you can listen to that. The one story that stays with me that I told, that I hadn't actually realized till I told it, was how much in the midst of the river was rising, and it was roaring, and it just didn't stop, and trees were falling and boulders were falling, and we're wading through the wet, and then the heat goes off, and then the hot water goes off, and then the woman's plunge is broken, and and in the midst of it, in the retreat, people just, it was an amazing experience of just deep heartedness, and how much people just want practices and community. Everybody wants it. It's just the forms may differ, but I think it's a basic human need to come together in some way that has a feeling of a deeper intent and of safety, where you can feel your own life and allow yourself to come into relationship with other people. That's not just social bantering and the way we are in the everyday world. And in the midst of all these occurrences, big occurrences, the Zendo sounds kept going on. The ritual and the sounds and the schedule. So trees falling off the cliff, and it's going, and then you hear at exactly the right time. Or in the morning, you wake up to just the river. Your whole body becomes the river, and then you hear the wake up bell going ding, 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 ding. There's something so comforting and grounding of just the constancy of it. It's like your body just, Sherry said on Tuesday that when she was in Switzerland in the Zendo and was experiencing a lot of grief because she was there because her friend, to accompany her friend in dying, the comfort that you just don't even know till you walk into the space. And then there's zabutons and zafus and familiar forms. And it's like, oh, which happens slowly over time. You don't even know it till all of a sudden you realize it's become your body. So I think I want to begin with, we're going to do a service at the end today. And I have a lot of things I did get excited about this topic because it's something you usually don't talk about it in Zen. I was thinking when I was sitting, it's a little bit like sex. It's like it's going on all the time, but nobody talks about it. And all these forums are going on and nobody talks about it. And usually we don't talk about Zazen or what happened in your Zazen. So to bring it forward and to do it in a way that feels skillful, feels like venturing into unknown territory. And did I say this wonderful book, Zen Ritual Studies of Zen Buddhist Theory and Practice? I started reading it. I've had it for years. And Suzuki Roshi, because Suzuki Roshi clearly brought all of this here from Japan. And you could say, well, they're Japanese forms, but they've been in this country for a good long while. So now who knows what they are, but what's the feeling behind them and what's the history behind them? So I want to bring some of that forward. In both the readings that I'm going to bring forward, it talks about Aheiji. So I want to just say something about Aheiji, my experience, my own personal little experience of Aheiji. Aheiji is the training monastery that Dogen set up. And I was able to be there with Everyday Zen. It's impeccably beautiful. It's been going on forever. And the floors are shiny. So I'm just going to tell you three. This is the way my mind works. But I mean, in the midst of the beauty and the shining forms and the bells are huge and the Makugyo is like, whoa, is one, all these, they're all, everybody who's there now are young monks who are mostly Zen has become routinized, or it's all sons of temple owners. It's like it passed by, what's it called? Primogenitor or something. So it's not necessarily like, wow, I want to do Zen for the rest of my life. It's like, this is my position in society. So they're all young men dressed up in brown because their Dharma transmitted as part of just the routine. This happens and then that happens, and they all walk around like this, and they just, there's something very beautiful, and there's something, this doesn't look like me and my body. So really, the hall is just impeccable, so beautiful. Everybody's moving. I mean, they just glide. And then one of the people in the Everyday Zen entourage who still does this, when he wears his okesa, he can't keep it on, and it's always trailing behind him. We're always following behind him, sort of spiffing him up. But I have this image of him walking through the Aheiji halls. I'm sorry, just like who's the one in Peanuts that is just yeah. So okay, that's one memory. Is we just are who we are, and we keep trying and doing our best. And the second is there was this elaborate service that they were there was like the Makugyo and the bum, and they were all doing like circadian knots and going in and out of each other. And it's just, I thought, if you put me in there, I would gum this up so fast and trip over my own feet. And it was so beautiful. But again, it felt other in terms of something I could enter into my own body. So Suzuki Roshi's son, Uitsu, it's an elected position as the head of training at Aheiji, and he was elected over and over. I mean, the feeling is that people really loved him and trusted him. And he's a pretty, I'll tell one more story about him. So there's this beauty and this boom, 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 it's all perfect. And then I look up, and because they're going by pretty fast, and all of a sudden I see Uitsu, who's much older than all of them, who actually is shorter than most of them. Maybe it's all because they've started eating meat. I don't. And what he's doing is he's walking along like this. He's just, it's like there's joy, and it just was, and I thought, that's the fruit of this practice. There's a way that you put like a snake in a bamboo tube. That's the one of the Zen saying. I mean, there is something that in the training that you learn, but if you think that's the point of it, you're going to miss Huitsu. Just it's to free you. There's a kind of spontaneity and beauty of expression that does come through the training, and I'll never forget that. And the third story is about him. Is we had a meeting with him. And you probably all know, because I've told it, but I'll tell it again, because is in Dogen, as I understand it, when he was going to appoint a successor, there was one person that they all thought that he would appoint, because this person was the smartest. And in terms of this story, I would guess that he probably had the forms most down. You know, there was something impeccable about him. And Dogen called him in and said, you're amazing, you're an amazing practitioner, but you know what? The one thing that you don't have, that you haven't developed yet, is grandmotherly mind. And for that reason, I'm going to pick this other person to be head of the monastery. So there's something so important here about the heart of what we're doing. And so when we were with Huitsu, because I've been, especially during that time, it was a really active question for me, is what is grandmotherly mind? And I asked him. And what his response was, through a translator, it's imagination. What I remember more than anything is the way he spoke to me and the way he met me. And I started to cry. It was so powerful. It's like he completely met me with grandmotherly mind. And then he came up to me afterwards and he said, that was a really good question. And then I kept trying to get his attention because, of course, you know, that's just what you did. That was it. That was done. But it was just that moment of it's about the heart and the connection in all of this. So those are my stories, or some of them. Now I want to read to you a little bit about Zen ritual, and this is by Dale S. Wright, who is a really wonderful Buddhist scholar. This is the introduction, rethinking ritual practice in Zen Buddhism. The role of ritual in Zen. Approaching the grand entrance to a Heiji, one of Japan's premier Zen Buddhist temples, I was both excited and intimidated. Oh, I'll also say Huitsu's assistant was a kindergarten teacher. I found that to be very trustworthy too. And he had a kindness that way. I understand that once I enter this gate, every moment of my life for the next 3 days will be subsumed under the disciplinary structures of Zen ritual. Although I have already trained in the ritual procedures of the Soto school, this is the head temple of its founder, the renowned Master Dogen. And I realize how exacting and demanding their adherence to proper ritual will be. Upon entrance, along with a handful of other lay people who have accepted the challenge of this brief meditation retreat, I am given specific instructions on how to conduct myself through virtually every moment of my stay. The details seem endless and excruciatingly difficult to master. How exactly to enter the meditation hall, to address the teacher, to bow, to hold one's bowl while engaging in mealtime rituals, and on and on. Where best to draw the mental line between actual Zen ritual and other procedural routines of the monastery baffles me. But virtually all life in a Zen monastery is predetermined, scripted, and taken out of the domain of human choice. Now I hope I get to what I really want to say, but whoops, it says the battery is going to go low in this Mac. Can we plug it in? If we lose you, just come back. Kristen's getting the plug. Having been at this point in Western Zen kind of an old timer, which of course is, you know, it's like I'm a baby, is you get to watch how at Zen center and training temples, what you thought was the way, then new Enos come in and they think it's the way, and they're absolutely certain of it. And you try sometimes very humbly to say, well, now you do 3 sessions during practice period at Tassajara, but back in our day, we just did 1 session and it seemed to work okay. And everybody thinks their experience is the absolute experience. So there's going to be some of that in here, which I'm really interested in. Some of these routinized life activities stand out from others as explicit religious ritual by virtue of their obvious sanctity, by their relationship to the founding myths or stories of the Zen tradition, and more. But all the routines of the Zen setting appear to be treated as essential to the life of Zen. And all life appears to be ritualized in some sense. Now instructed in proper ritual procedure, my brief immersion in Zen monastic life begins. I'm going to skip around here a little bit because there are things I specifically want to bring forward. Ritual. The ritual most frequently associated with Zen monastic practice is Zazen. Zazen is a ritual. It's an enactment. I stayed up late at night after everybody went to bed, and I snuck down the back stairs and I sat Zazen. And then we've become fast friends ever since because she did the same thing, and we just sat Zazen down, quiet and Benichi. That's more my way. I will remember that forever. So the rituals of sutra chanting, meal ritual, incense offerings, teachings, dokusan, as well as things like Buddha's birthday and Buddha's enlightenment and all those things that we do, Jukai. Instructions provided by the tradition on how to enact ritual movement and procedure often fail to communicate any sense of how these rituals function internally for practitioners. So what happens inside? Essentially, what's the point of all this? This requires, in addition to asking ourselves what Zen Buddhists do, we also consider what effect their ritual actions might have in creating the kind of life that they envision. Seems natural to want to ask that, right? In thinking seriously about Zen ritual, we need to reflect on both the goal or the point of these continual ceremonies and how it might be possible that such a goal could be achieved through these particular ritual activities. And then he goes on to say, so if the main goal, as it's articulated, the language that's often used in Zen is enlightenment, what does striking the bell and doing the bows and all of this have to do with enlightenment? How does anything as mundane as ritual give rise to anything as exalted as enlightenment? Sounds like a good question, huh? Zen ritual actually does something to practitioners. It shapes them into certain kinds of subjects, who not only think certain thoughts, but also perceive the world and understand themselves through patterns impressed upon them by the repeated action of ritual upon body and mind. So there's a kind of repetition to this. If you're in a monastery, you're doing it every day. It's like the bells at Tassajara, bong, ding, bong, 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 bong. But here, you come and we repeat. We're going to do service today. Come to the all-day sit. We're holding it lightly in ritual. Ritual establishes a context of experience in which certain moods dominate and desires, emotions, states of mind, and actions come to the fore. You might ask what they are. And I think maybe Marianne brought some of this forward too. It fosters a sense of humility, of selflessness, while simultaneously giving rise to mindfulness, self-control, courage, or wisdom. Ritual makes effective use of imagination to foster change in practitioners. Ritual practitioners proceed, you enter the ritual of Zazen and service as if things were different than they seemed before entering the ritual. They imagine a state of affairs other than common sense would dictate and proceed as if something other than that were true. You engage in Zazen as if you are the Buddha. It's an enactment of the Buddha. You don't sit to become a Buddha. When we were doing ritual with the firefighters at the end, we had done a collage and someone had put the word elegance. I was really struck by that word. It stayed with me. And so they were taking things off the altar. And I said, can you come forward with a sense of elegance and care? And they completely, each person completely embodied that. I think there is a beautiful elegance to these rituals that teaches us how to move and how to touch things with care and consideration and how to be in relationship. And then they went outside and created a ritual all by themselves that was just full of of elegance and care. So there's a kind of training, and I really feel, I think I said this on Tuesday, that because I have Zen training in my body, I can help hold ritual space for others without it being anything special. You just know it in your body. And then you don't know the ways it's going to come forward in the world. But it really is about care and beauty. A little bit more here. The mental and the physical are intertwined or non-dual. Zen practices, of course, I love it when I read things in here to think, oh, I say that. Zen practice is a very physical, embodied practice, and to the ways in which Zen mind is a manifestation or extension of something even more basic Zen ritual. It's we're training our bodies, how to be in our bodies in the world and to take care of everything. It is an embodied practice. So you step out of rational analysis, daydreaming, mental wandering into the present moment. Some Zen masters claim that meditative rituals are non-purposive. They are not done for any reason beyond the act of doing them. I think that's part of what drives us crazy. It's like, why are we doing this? What are you doing? Could you please tell me the reason? And you just say, just do it. Just hit the bell. No, wait a minute. Because we're so cognitive and we're so linear. Zen ritual asks you to just enter with the full imagination of your wholehearted body. Constancy, just keep doing it. And it does say here, and maybe we'll pick this up later, is that contrary to some beliefs, is the rituals have changed over time and continue to change, which of course they're going to change when they come to the West. Or Western bodies and minds entering these. So there's something very beautiful and alive in that. Okay. Did you enjoy that? Oh, good. You're going to get more of it. There's some great chapters in here. One of the ones that I want to bring forward too is she has a whole book which I've read and I really like, is Paula Arai, and she researched, because the monastic is so often focused on men, that she researched rituals that women use in Japan in their homes, and ceremonies and rituals that are directly connected to what's happening in the monastery, but they've made them in their homes, like Ellen and Marianne brought that forward. Just the beauty of ritual that is comforting and constant and a solace in the midst of huge don't know. So then I went to, so what does Suzuki Roshi have to say about all this? And I read one thing on Tuesday again. Here's another one from Not Always So, and it's called Find Out for Yourself. In your Zazen or in your life, you will have many difficulties or problems. I just love the way he says it. It's like, it doesn't make it more, it doesn't make it less. It's just another quote where he says, the problems you have now, you'll have for the rest of your life. Oh, God, no. It's like, okay, we'll start there. And then what comes next? When you have a problem, see if you can find out for yourself why you have a problem. Usually you will try to solve your difficulty in the best way as soon as possible. In other words, let's get out of here and get over it. Rather than studying for yourself, you ask someone why you have a problem. That kind of approach may work well for your usual life. But if you want to study Zen, it doesn't help. So we're already moving into a different realm, which I think Zen ritual and Witsu might call the realm of imagination or possibility or creativity, or not knowing is most intimate, which is really a Zazen mind, which is really a ritual body of being here in the midst of everything with presence. And question is way more important than the answer, because you'll see in a minute, the minute you have an answer, you think that's the answer, and then it doesn't work the next time. And then you think, well, it must be somebody's fault or my fault, or anyway. The moment you were told something by someone and you think you understand, you will stick to it and you will lose the full function of your nature. When you seek something, your true nature is in full activity, as if you were feeling for your pillow in the dark. If you know where the pillow is, your mind is not in full function. You get that on a body level. These things are all, it's so much fun to share them because there's so much, the ritual, these stories and teachings, like reaching for a pillow in the dark, is so much part of my body at this point. It's like it comes up all the time. I don't know what that is, but it's like trying to figure it out. It's like move into this Zazen body, ritual body. And then you can be in the midst of complete not knowing and just trust the next step. Otherwise, your mind is acting in a limited sense. When you are seeking for a pillow without knowing where it is, then your mind is open to everything. In this way, you will have a more subtle attitude towards everything, and you will see things as it is. Things as it is. If you want to study something, it's better not to know what the answer is. Because you are not satisfied with something you are told, and because you cannot rely on anything set up by someone else. You cannot rely on anything set up by someone else. Ultimately, you know that. That's why I came to Buddhism at 26. I looked around and I thought, there is nothing here that anybody has told me and probably is going to tell me that I can rely on for the rest of my life. I just knew it. And I didn't know what else to do, but somehow I got in a car and drove to San Francisco Zen Center. The world is not reliable in the way that you think it is. You study Buddhism without knowing how to study it. In this way, you find out for yourself what we really mean by Buddha nature, practice, or enlightenment. Some of you may study something only if you like it. No. If you don't like it, you ignore it. That is a selfish way, and it also limits your power of study. Good or bad, small or big, we study to discover the true reason why something is so big and why something is so small, why something is so good and why something is not so good. If you try to discover only something good, you will miss something and you will be always limiting your faculties. When you live in a limited world, you cannot accept things as it is. The red flag always is, I'm up against my limited world, is if I start feeling reactive. When my old karmic patterns start coming up, I just hit the edge of it. Then it's like, it's not a problem. It's just take a breath right here, because the whole world just shut down within what I already know. You can do it. I do it. You can continue as long as you want, but more and more, you know, this is suffering because it feels small and tight, and there's not a sense of generosity or love or expansion in it. You just keep coming back. That's all the rituals of training is. Even if a Zen master had just 2 or 3 students, she would never tell them our way in detail. You just don't sit down and tell people what to do, what's the good way and what's the right way. The only way to study with this person is to eat with them, to talk with them, and to do everything with them. So it's lived and embodied. It's constancy. It's like you just show up and we just do the services and we do the chants and we do this talking together, and that's where it happens. It's embodied, heart to heart, warm face to warm face, warm hand to warm hand. That's the heart of our tradition. When I was at a Heiji, assisting my teacher, he did not tell us anything. And whenever we made a mistake, he scolded us. The usual way to open sliding doors is to open one on the right. But when I opened it that way, I was scolded. I love this story, not the scolding part. Don't open it that way, not that side. So the next morning, I opened the other side and I got scolded again. I didn't know what to do. Later, I found out that the day that I opened the right side, his guest was on the right side, so I should have opened the other side. Before opening the door, I should have been careful to find out which side his guest was on. What's happening in this moment? You don't open the door with your mind. You open the door with your body and presence and intuition. What's the most appropriate response? The next day, I was appointed to serve him, and I gave him a cup of tea. Usually you fill 80% of the cup. Since that is the rule, I filled 80% or 70%, and he said, "Give me hot tea, fill the cup with hot, strong tea." So the next morning, when there were some guests, I filled all the cups with hot, strong tea, almost 99%, and I served them. I was scolded. Actually, there is no rule. He himself liked very hot, bitter tea filled to the brim, but almost all the guests didn't like hot, bitter tea. For him, I should serve hot, bitter tea, and for the guests, I should offer tea the usual way. What's the appropriate response? He never told us anything. Just a little bit more here. I'm going to finish, then we'll do service. We'll get to enact it. He never told us anything. When I got up 20 minutes early, I love this story. These stories just, because there's other stories about Zen Center that people enacted some of this stuff and got scolded too. When I got up 20 minutes earlier than the wake-up bell, I was scolded. Don't get up so early. You will disturb my sleep. I mean, he clearly was trying to be a good Zen student. And Suzuki Roshi said, "Calm down, boy." Usually if I got up earlier, it was good, but for him, it was not so good. When you try to understand things better without any rules or prejudice, this is the meaning of selflessness. You may say that something is a rule, but rules are already a selfish idea. Isn't that interesting? Rules are already a selfish idea. Actually, there are no rules. So when you say this is the rule, you are forcing the rules on others. And my guess is that has a lot to do with the way you're saying it. If I tell you this is a rule, well, if somebody says that to me, we know what I'm I watch that, but in general, it's not a good thing to do with me. But I try to be flexible. Rules are only needed when we don't have much time or when we cannot help others more closely in a kind way. To say this is the rule So you should do it is easy, but actually that is not our way. For the beginner, maybe instruction is necessary, but for advanced students, we don't give much instruction and they try out various ways. Enter it, give yourself to it. We're all beginners, so study it. I mean, there is something to learn, but don't take yourself so seriously. Enter with, it's like Marianne enters with a musician's body. I mean, it's amazing. And I don't have a musician's body, so I enter from someplace else, and you're going to find the way that you enter. But that's as important as what you do. Is just stay in your own body and enter fully and wholeheartedly and find out. Meet the bell, meet yourself, meet the mandala of service, meet the world. Awake, awake. If possible, we give instruction to people one by one. Because this is difficult, we give group instruction or a lecture like this, but don't stick to the lecture. Think about what I really mean. I feel sorry that I cannot help you very much. I feel sorry that I cannot help you very much. But the way to study true Zen is not verbal. Just open yourself and give up everything. Whatever happens, whether you think it is good or bad, study closely and see what you find out. This is the fundamental attitude. Sometimes you will do things without much reason, like a child who draws pictures, whether they are good or bad. If that is difficult for you, you are not actually ready to practice Zazen. Interesting, huh? Beginner's mind. Do things without much reason, like a child who draws pictures, whether they are good or bad. We do service today. Can you be a child? Not good or bad, but just enter. Give yourself to it. See what happens next. This is what it means to surrender. Even though you have nothing to surrender, without losing yourself by sticking to a particular rule or understanding, keep finding yourself moment after moment. This is the only thing for you to do. Thank you very much. It's impossible. But and life is impossible. Living this life is impossible, in case you haven't noticed. And it's divine and it's beautiful and it's difficult. And there's sun and there's rain and there's rushing rivers and bongs and falling down and getting up. And there's just the constancy of, and you're going to hear a bell. And the more you are here, when you hear a bell, your body will respond and know what to do from the inside, not because somebody told you it's a rule, but in the beginning, it's like you can look around and do what other people are doing. But more and more, it's just from the inside. And that's when all of life comes closer. Because that's just the truth of it. Because it's really training in being alive and being a kind and present human being. And then we're going to do this form of service, which we'll do right now. We're going to chant the Metta Sutta. If you're at home,